I want to talk about the issue of how propaganda manufactures consent. What I want to discuss briefly is this topic in the context of how I think propaganda in the Trump era has enrolled liberals and progressives in something I think really dangerous for the world and also dangerous politically for progressive politics in general and the prospects of stopping right-wing politicians and right-wing power. I'll begin with Russiagate. We all know now Russiagate was a scam and it was a political failure. But it happened for very deliberate reasons, and I think we need to reckon with those reasons. It arose, I think, because of a convergence of very powerful interests, and all those interests had the same ultimate interest, which is protecting their own privilege. And what the beauty of their con is they got to enroll millions of people in it, including liberals and progressives. So Russiagate begins with the 2016 campaign. Already on the campaign trail, you have national security state elites voicing public opposition and concern about Donald Trump, not because they care about his racism or his misogyny, but because they don't see him as a suitable steward of the U.S. empire. They also don't like the fact that he's deviating from certain orthodoxies, although the extent to which he means, the extent to which he's sincere about that is in question. But he's talking about having better relations with Russia, and he's also voicing rhetorical opposition to military intervention abroad. So he's challenging the consensus of the bipartisan foreign policy establishment, perhaps doing it as a con because he's a good salesman, and I think it was a con, but nonetheless, he's doing it. So we see the hostility to Trump already arise then. Meanwhile, what's going on behind the scenes, we learn later on, is an actual investigation of a potential Trump-Russia conspiracy based on totally specious grounds that we don't have to go into now, but the results show just how baseless it was. The Mueller report couldn't even find a single member of the Trump campaign interacting with anybody actually acting on the Russian government's behalf. Only people who claim to know Russians or who might have a Russian passport. Meanwhile, you have the Clinton campaign, and even before the election, they were latching onto this talking point that they had developed of Trump as a Putin puppet. And after they lose the election in the surprise, shocking loss, they have a meeting, as is reported in the book Shattered, within 24 hours of Hillary Clinton's concession speech, and they decide that this election was not on the up and up, and that one of the main reasons they lost was James Comey, the FBI director, who came out with an October surprise, but also Russia. And they decide very deliberately to push that narrative above all else. And from that point, we have a nonstop effort blaming Russia and blaming stolen emails for the loss of the Clinton campaign. Zero self-reflection on the part of the Clintons and their people for why they actually lost. And there's a very good reason for that, because honest self-reflection would mean looking critically at your own policies. And given the fact that so many people were duped into believing that Trump was a working-class champion who was going to take on the neoliberal establishment, for Democrats to transform and to actually offer a real alternative to Trump and show people why that was a con, that would mean challenging their own privileged role within that system and basically giving up their role as the beneficiaries of the corrupt system that Trump fooled people into thinking he was opposing. And then we have the media, and then we have the media latching onto this because catering to the national security state and the establishment wing is, generally the function of the elite media, which wants to sell advertisements to privileged sectors and wants to reach elite audiences and sell them a worldview that reinforces their own privilege. And also, this whole thing is great for ratings, to have a nonstop spy thriller. Well, what is the impact on everybody else? Well, the population, after some initial flare-ups of authentic resistance, remember all of us going to the airports to oppose the Muslim ban, and the excitement of an actual resistance in the early days of the Trump era. Well, all that gets kicked to the curb, and the general population is reduced to being spectators in an inter-elite battle, where now all of a sudden intelligence officials are our heroes, and Trump is to be opposed not because of anything he's doing to the general population, not because of his record tax heist, the largest upward transfer of wealth in U.S. history with his tax cuts, but because he's not saying mean things about Vladimir Putin. And in public, he's appearing nice to Vladimir Putin. And what does this lead to? Well, so, you know, Trump's resistance, so-called resistance, is reduced to being led by unhinged conspiracy theorists, positing that Trump is a Russian agent. All this hands Trump a massive gift, and that instead of actually opposing him, people are clinging on to these crazy theories. Another gift comes when all this finally collapses, culminating in Robert Mueller, our savior figure, delivering testimony in July and not even being familiar with the details of his own investigation, the one that was supposed to bring down Donald Trump. Now, one day later, Ukrainegate begins, and it's pretty much a similar thing, a lot of parallels. The one difference is that this time it looks like Trump actually did something. There does appear to be some kind of scheme that he was overseeing to pressure Ukraine, although from the available evidence, I don't think it got very far, but we'll see. Maybe something will come up. But the parallels to Russiagate are enough, I think, to give pause and to be seriously concerned. Again, the source of the worry originates with the national security state. And what are they upset about? You know, when Trump froze aid to Palestinian refugees, to UNRWA, in a deliberate bid, this was openly expressed, to basically pressure Palestinian negotiators to give up their internationally recognized right of return. So straight up blackmail. Or when Trump freezes aid to Central American migrants and in fact uses that aid to pay the salaries of the coup plotters who he's trying to install in Venezuela. These national security state officials don't say anything. But what did he do here? He froze briefly some aid or some money that was used to buy U.S. weapons to give to Ukraine to continue a proxy war that the U.S. basically started back in 2014. That's what the issue is here. And in the process, he also sought some investigations that could have implicated Joe Biden, who also happens to be another member of the elite, in the same way that the damage of Russiagate, or the main offense that Trump was supposedly committed, was that he conspired in an effort to weaken another member of the elite, Hillary Clinton, which of course he didn't. But in this case, again, Trump goes after Joe Biden, and you can't do that. You can bomb Cambodia like Nixon did. You can kill and spy on activists like Nixon did. That's not impeachable, but going after another faction of the elite, that is. And so right now we're once again being enrolled in another national security state generated quote-unquote scandal with the promise again that that is going to bring down Trump. And the fantasy of this being, you know, the beginning of the end is once again very much prevalent. And that's the danger for domestic politics. To the world, the fact that the underlying policy is not even scrutinized. So why are we arming Ukraine? Why are we fueling this proxy war? And why are we incentivizing Trump to increase tensions with nuclear-armed Russia? That is not being discussed. And that is one area where the dangers here are catastrophic, not just for progressive political fortunes, but for the entire world. And I'll leave it there, and I'll pick up more in the question period. Thank you very much. Thank you.